Today I'm going to be comparing the 10 to 18 millimeter EF-S with the NISI RF-S native on the Canon RF mount. This should be really interesting. I'm going to be using the R7. One of these is going to be staying in my bag and one of them is going to be going bye-bye. But I got to figure out which one. So you're going to stick around, you're going to watch the unboxing, and then I'm going to do some tests with it, come back in here and figure out which one of these is my new lover for the R7. So I have the Canon 10 to 18 EF-S. This is an older lens, and this one has automatic focus. And then I have the new NISI, which I actually have never heard of before. And NISI is a 2.8 constant aperture. Obviously there's no zoom, so it's just stuck at 2.8, but then you can change it and shrink that aperture up as well. And it's a 9mm. So this is 10 to 18, this is 9. On a APS-C crop, this one, the 10 to 18, is going to be like a 16 to whatever 1.6 times 18 is. So maybe like a 28 or a 30 millimeter possibly. I'm sure there's somebody with a calculator figuring that out right now. The 9mm is more like a 14.5 millimeter equivalent on a full frame. So this one's actually going to be wider than this one. This was more expensive than this one. I got this refurbished on Amazon for about $185. And this, I believe, was around $450 or so. But this does have weather sealing. This doesn't. Let's open up the Canon first because a lot of you already own the Canon and know it. There's probably nothing special that you really need to know. There's the instructions. That's exactly how this came. This wasn't even fastened on here. No weather sealing at all, and it's kind of funny that this wasn't even on. It was just probably sitting off. It wasn't even wound on. Very, very light. You got your image stabilization. You got your autofocus. And again, there is no autofocus. No autofocus on this guy, but autofocus on here. I stopped these lenses down to about f4 or f8 when it comes to architectural photography because I want most things in focus. It is really weird to go from RF glass to back to EF because I'm used to having to find this perfectly and then lock it in, but this one just twists on pretty easy. It doesn't come out a whole lot with the zoom. The widest actually sticks out a little bit. I owned this briefly a year ago and then I decided I didn't need it because, well, I shoot with the 15 to 35. But if I'm looking for something to substitute on the R7 while my R6 Mark II is getting fixed, this would probably be the way to go. Except this came into my view and this looks like it's a great option as well. I don't have a zoom on this. It's just going to be stuck at that 9mm. So I'll have to physically move around for those shots, and that there's going to be no compression difference where I can get a little bit more compression if I want to zoom in. But I did use the Rokinon 14mm on a full frame for about a year before I went back over to a zoom, and I did enjoy being at that fixed focal length. All right, so let's unbox the NISI 2.8 9mm. Oh, now they know that I broke the seal there, so there's no going back, I guess, on this one. By the way, one of these will be going back, either this one or this one. I'm not sure which one. That's why I got to do some tests with this. The lens hood was the first thing that came out. This is actually pretty solid of a lens hood. Looks like it screws on, not cheap. Manual. So first of all, they wrap up their case. This is actually nicer than what Canon does. Okay, right before I unwrap this, I will tell you there's definitely a weight difference. This thing is heavy. Footprint looks very similar, so let's open this up here. Unlike the Canon, this is all plastic. This is metal. Wow. I mean, this is solid. The metal on here is nice. Does not feel like it was put together cheap. Focus ring right here is very small. It's a good size on the NISI, and it's got nice dampening. I can tell already where this is pretty flimsy. So if I wanted to pull focus, this is nice. And it should be, because this is 100% manual. This one, I can rely on the autofocus if I need to. Also, it has image stabilization, but the R7 has in-body image stabilization, so that's not a problem. So out of curiosity, can I have the lens cap on? And, oh, you can. So lens cap can be on and the hood can be on too, and it just kind of screws off. Okay, so not bad. Wow, that feels solid. It's got some solid sound to it. From my understanding, these were screw-ons, but the fact that it's not makes it even better. The filter size for this is going to be a 67mm, which is actually pretty good and reasonable in price. We have the rubber gasket for weather sealing, and this one's noticeable. It's kind of a cool little yellow-orange fall-looking color there. So you've got the nice weather sealing. This one does not have weather sealing, and it's just plastic. We got metal mount right here, plastic here. And so it, again, $175, $185 refurbished-ish. That was the price. And this one's about $450. So I would expect nothing but solid quality glass here for the build for that manual. This is an RF mount, so this will go on the Canon R7, but the R7 is actually filming me right now, so I'm going to put this on the R6 Mark II, which the body is very similar to the R7, and that'll give you an idea of what it looks like on there. Now, the cool thing about this is it actually feels really light. So in order to get that zoom that you would get with this 10 to 18mm, I have the 15 to 35 here, which does get longer and it is wider. So it is going to be a bigger lens and it covers a full frame sensor, but this thing is heavy. I'm on a tripod all the time with this. I'm not hand holding it, or it's on a gimbal when it comes to video. This would be a lot lighter, but this one is not as wide as the NISI. The NISI is going to be about 14.5mm equivalent, and this is only 15mm. So I'm going to get more in the image than I am with this. So that scene, I'm going to get a lot more, which is nice for real estate photography. This is on the 10 to 18mm at 4.5 aperture. So the f-stop is 4.5. And now we are at 5.6, 8, f11, f16, and f22 it goes all the way to. So it really gets small if you need to, where the other one is just f16 is the smallest you could go. That's f2.8. That is f4, f5.6, f8, f11, f16. And it's just so smooth on here to move that aperture. So the benefit with the 10 to 16 EF adapted onto the R7 is that I get autofocus. And so this is 4.5 f-stop, that's as wide open as it goes. And so this should be focusing on me. The ISO, by the way, it is dusk. So the ISO is 2000, 150th shutter because I'm doing 24 frames per second. And yeah, so this at dusk should still be good at focus with the R7. And although the R7 is an APS-C crop sensor, the noise at 2000 ISO is not bad at all. It's actually pretty good. I have it at auto white balance because I don't feel like figuring it out. I'm sure you all would be so super smart about it, but not me. So I just punched into 18mm, which obviously you cannot do that with the NISI. You have to stay at that 9mm mark. And because of that, I don't have that option of staying with a nice wide open aperture. The widest I can go here is 5.6, which still isn't that bad. 6400 ISO on a full frame is nothing. On an APS-C, that's where it gets a little iffy, so you tell me how this looks. I don't think it looks too bad. I think the R7 handles high ISO pretty good. Once you get to 12,000, it does break down more, but right now this is pretty good at 5.6. And again, when you're doing architectural photography, you want to go really wide, but also you do want to zoom in when you're doing some more of the landscape shots. And with the NISI, you would have to move around and you would lose that kind of compression. 18 millimeters is equivalent to 28.8, so we'll say 29 millimeters on a full frame. So it's not quite that 15 to 35 that you get on the full frame R6 Mark II. This one would be a little bit less and not as wide. So it's going to be equivalent to a 16 millimeter and not the 15, and it's going to cut short just under 29 millimeters. That's it, but for less than $200 used, it's a deal. It's definitely an awesome deal. Now, when it comes to the quality of the build, I would say the NISI definitely wins. This thing is a metal mount, metal all around, super strong. It is awesome. You could probably use this in a fight and win. This thing would just crack over an ant. It is all plastic. Plus, you're gonna have to use this adapter to get it on your R7 or your other RF-S mount. And so it is light, it is a little bit weaker. This does have that rubber gasket right on there, which is nice, knowing that you're not going to get that kind of moisture inside of your R7, where if you have some rain, there's a good possibility that you could get that inside of your Canon R7 or your RF-S mount camera. Another thing to note is the 10 to 18 does not come with the hood. So you will not get the hood on here. The hood does come with this 9mm NISI, which it should. For $450 plus, you should have all you can. Unfortunately, what you don't have is autofocus. You have manual focus, and that could be a big hit for some of you. So right now, I'm gonna lay it down who this is for, because there's a specific group that it is for, and who this is for, and then which one of these is for me. For those of you that are really interested in professional photography when it comes to architecture, this is actually a really good, crisp, high contrast lens with great flare control. I would highly recommend it. But if you have a full frame camera, I would say that this is not for you. This is for those of you that only have an APS-C camera like the R7 or the R10 and want to get into that ultra wide. Also, you're gonna have to do the manual focus and really look at the peaking and make sure that you are in focus. So when you're shooting at 2.8 at night and you want to go look at the stars, you're gonna have to put it to infinity and make sure that it is in there. This is also an amazing lens for those of you that want to get into the video walkthrough realm on a gimbal. It's light, relatively speaking, lighter than the 15 to 35, and it just smooth focus and smooth aperture. You can have that nice aperture change as you're moving indoors, pulling that focus, pulling the aperture, and you're not going to have a lot of jitter with that. So this would make an amazing video lens for those video walkthroughs. Now, for those of you that the R7 or the R10 or any of the other EF-S crop sensor cameras may not be your main camera, and you use a full frame camera, well, then I would have to recommend this one right here, because if you have a full frame camera, it is well worth the extra money to either get the 15 to 35 2.8 or even the 14 to 35. The L series lens glasses will blow this away when it comes to architecture and video walkthrough. It'll also blow away the NISI as well. So I would highly recommend sticking to the full frame when it comes to ultra wide. And so this would make an excellent backup for less than $200 used, especially on Amazon. Again, the links are below. on these two lenses. This one is a steal. You get autofocus, you get image stabilization, and the autofocus actually does come in handy. Now at 10 millimeters, you are looking at about a 16 millimeter equivalent, and a lot of things are in focus at 4.5 aperture, but you may not be perfectly focused, and that touch to focus that Canon allows you to do does come in handy. Whereas with the NISI, you really have to dial it in, and you can be off a little bit because really it's coming down to eyesight on an ultra wide image. And even zooming in with the digital zoom for focus, you can be off. Flare is controlled really well with the NISI on direct sunlight. It works out well. You get awesome looking flare that does come through. With the Canon, it does distort a little bit. Both images are sharp, but this doesn't operate as well. But again, this would be the way to go if you already have full frame, because I would say go to the 15-35 or the 14-35 L series. It is well worth the money. It is amazing. But again, if all you are is an R7 shooter, R10 shooter, EF-S shooter, with that mount, then this is going to be a very sharp option and really good when you stop it down to about f8. Anything past f5.6 is going to look great. The vignetting is going to go away. Video walkthroughs are going to look really good. I would shoot this probably around an f4 with the video walkthroughs. But at the same time, this does operate pretty good on the R7, so you really can't go wrong with either. So if price matters and autofocus matters and vlogging to you matters, talking head videos like this one, then I would choose this one over this one. This one is very niche. It is very specific to a specific demographic, and it may sit on your table more often than you want. And for $450, although it is affordable for a lot of people, it may not be worth it. This $175, look, you can lose that in, like, you know, playing poker with my mom. She doesn't play poker. That's how good she is. So you may have guessed it already, since I am a Canon R7 and an R6 Mark II user, this is the one that I'm going to be sticking around with, and it's just going to be a backup. It really, for $175, I'm okay putting this as a backup. Now, the NISI is going to sit around on my desk a lot more often, and for $450, that money could be better spent elsewhere. Lenses, accessories, you know, anything else. So for $175 plus tax, this one just makes so much sense. And brand new, if you want brand new, I believe you can get it for about $250, $225, and that's still a really good deal. This is an excellent lens, so is this, but again, the Canon L series lenses are gonna blow them away. And if you have full frame, that's the way to go. These make amazing backups. Both these lenses are going to be in the link below, along with the 15-35 2.8, the 14-35 f4, and I might throw in down there the 15-30, which is about a $400 lens. Another option, not L series, but if you're a full framer, that is very affordable and something to look at, especially if you're gonna stop down to about f8. If you like these kind of reviews, please hit that like button. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. And I should get some more videos out comparing these, maybe the 15-35 2.8 with this guy on the R7. So the R7 versus the R6 Mark II, both different lenses, but how do they compare? That might be a video for another time. If you want to see that video, again, like, subscribe, and make a comment below letting me know, Jared, that sounds like an awesome video. Or if you have a lens that I have not reviewed on this channel that you're interested in with the Canon RF or the RF-S Mount, leave a comment below on that one. And yes, I do read the comments. I know you're super sad, everything's over, but guess what? There's some other videos right over here. And you know the spiel, Google knows you better than you know you, so just watch one of them. They know what's best.